Okay, it's setting up the webinar for, and we are possibly being recorded now. And
Okay.
as soon as it's confirmed that it's recording, I'm going to, uh, it is saying we are recording now. So
Um,
welcome everyone to Freedom Friday. It is, and I'll let Jason, if you're able to check on any commentary, that's the one thing I don't see is the commentary.
Trying to figure it out right now.
As we have talked, we have so much to learn from each other, right? uh, Jason is with the founder of Exceptional Results Now, and he is our guest for Freedom Friday, which all of our wonderful listeners that have been watching Freedom Friday for many years now knows I love to interview amazing leaders, powerful community influencers, and individuals that inspire me. And Jason, please share what caused you to join us today.
Sure. Well, a number of things caused me to join you today. First, most importantly, is obviously we're collaborating together as coaches, and I'm very excited to be able to begin with that. One light ahead, obviously, you're focused on really helping people break through, and you're looking at becoming global in your reach. And exceptional results now, we're also focused on really working with high achievers and helping them break through to reach exceptional results. So we had alignment when we talked, and as we got to really feel the energy with each other, it sort of blossomed from there. And it was sort of like,
Right.
well, how can we not only um, take this alignment and go forward with it, but how can we strengthen each other? What are your strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? What are your weaknesses? And that's one of the most exciting things that you can have in a relationship between two people as you get to know each other, is beyond the rapport, really sort of saying, okay, well, what's the deal here? And forgive me if I get into my Brooklyn here, but this is sort of,
Love
you know
it.
if you're going to do business together, get past all the niceties and sort of get down to the brass tacks of, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? And we got right into it. And it was very, very exciting because, you were doing the Freedom Fridays and you told me about it right away. And I told you about the podcast that I was doing, as well as the ways in which that I'm looking to expand and really scale exceptional results now. And the most important thing is, now I'll get into sort of my bigger spiel and stick, which is that
Mhm.
you really have to have a primary mission.
Mhm.
And I recently wrote a book called Winning with Exceptionalism, because for the last 25 years I've been an entrepreneur and executive, and I've really taken for granted that I have these big primary missions that I focus on. And once I create that mission, I go, excuse the expression, but balls to the wall to really go after that mission. So, to step back and explain what is a primary mission, I'm going to give you the story of my first business effort failure and what happened. So, I was a dot-com kid in the 90s. I worked for MTV Networks, was really into the internet and all the things that you could do. And so I decided to start a dot-com around creative talent and artists and really leveraging them into the commercial market space. And we actually attracted some very, very savvy investors, one of which was a big law firm that was housed in the World Trade Center. And unfortunately, on 9/11, a plane flew through their window just when we were about to get our big investment. So there went my big payday. And fortunately, I was not in the building at the time. That's the most important thing. But rather than give up and just go back to work, I decided to retrench and reposition myself. And 1 month later, I started a real estate company focused on environmental development. And it's very funny. The person I went into business with was an advisor who basically took me aside when the first business collapsed and said, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go into real estate because there are all these displaced people in downtown Manhattan and they need a place to live." And he just looked at me like, "You have some balls, kid."
Mhm.
He was like, "That's a great idea. Let's go into business together." And so, that was very, very exciting for me to know that I had a great idea that I could, do something with. And so it became my mission to, my primary mission became, how can we become the best developer in the world for green development, for environmental development? And so for the next decade, I really, worked on building a company that was focused on trying to address solutions and come up with the best strategies to help people go green. And we eventually wound up creating an idea and a design for microgrid communities, which are communities where they have the renewable energy, whether it's solar rooftops or wind energy, but basically the entire community is powered by the renewable energy, and you sell the excess energy into the grid. So the residents of the community actually are making money from living there. And, this is a concept that, people were like, wait, you're telling me that I wouldn't have to pay taxes? Wouldn't have to pay taxes. In fact, you would probably have a very subsidized cost of living because of, not only the energy that's produced, but then you could also produce food. You could produce different resources. You could, bring in commercial industry because you have the power, you have the resources, you create everything. So therefore, you don't have to rely on the outside world. So we created a concept that we, titled Live, Work, Play. And you hear it all over now, but we were really the first ones who were talking about it, that you have a community, we call it the microgrid community, where you live, work, play. And you attract people from outside from a tourism standpoint to see what you're about, but you're very insular otherwise. And as we went along trying to do this and develop it, I looked at the mission and it only got bigger and bigger to now where I'm no longer even focused on the developments that we've done. I'm focused on, how can we use this development idea? How can we use this concept and solve hunger and homelessness? So that's now my big thing. And that's where, exceptional results now and winning with exceptionalism really came from, was the fact that I suddenly, looked at what I was doing and said, I can do this bigger. I can do this better. I can help so many more people in the world by, changing my outlook to, rather than being about building a community, to solving a big problem. And so my primary mission in life is to end hunger and homelessness on this planet, because they're solvable problems. We're just not focused on solving them. And if I can convince enough people that by being exceptional, this is something that we can do together, then obviously it takes my mission a lot less time to be accomplished.
And being the serial entrepreneur you are, you've got a multitude of ways of doing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Tony Robbins is the best at quoting that, you don't have to have the resources, you just have to be resourceful. And that resourcefulness is the most important quality that you can have. And, that's truly what entrepreneurship is about. You are taking the steps that nobody else wants to take, and you're looking everywhere to see how you can create something and bring people together and solve a problem that exists in the marketplace. And it really is about being resourceful and never giving up, and finding new ways to do things. And truthfully, as I've told you, I'm a gunslinger. I'm a Billy the Kid, outlaw Josie Wales type, that, I shoot first and ask questions later, because I want to make things happen.
I so respect that. And one of the things that we've so connected on is the ability to look at things from multitude of perspectives,
Hmm.
and to be able to look at how, as you said, what we can create, what we can learn and grow from each other, and how we can support the areas that we need support in,
Yeah.
and align our future paths from that. And one of those ways is a podcast that we're going to start in the near future. But and I want to make sure we share about that before we end today. Yet, as you know, I love asking specific questions in our Freedom Friday to make sure our listeners have a nugget to walk away with. Not that you don't spew them on your own. Is the opportunity to, as you look at your leadership journey and you look at the process you've been on to learn what makes you a powerful leader, what would you say is the biggest nugget somebody could walk away with?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, that really is addressing the elephant, isn't it?
You're setting the stage. I love it.
You really are. You are really are making me set the stage. You know, I am focused on exceptionalism only because there was a phrase, and it's in my book, funny enough, but um, there was a phrase in my music teacher's classroom in high school: adequacy has no place in the pursuit of perfection.
Wow.
And I have always used that. And then recently, I adopted a motto that it's all about improving 1% every day.
Hmm.
And that is the biggest lesson that I could tell anybody is that, um, if you want to be powerful, if you want to be exceptional, if you really want to make a difference in this world, what it is that you have to go out and do the job. And then once the job is done, you have to ask yourself, how can I do it better? And you have to get right back to work and you have to work on it again and again and again, every job you take on. When I started in real estate 20 years ago, I had no clue what I was doing other than I literally saw an opportunity to help people that were displaced in downtown Manhattan. And the funny part about it is I never bought a brownstone in Brooklyn. It was the hardest thing to do, and I wound up buying land in Hawaii and California to start my professional career in real estate. And we wound up learning about setbacks and deed restrictions so that we could make that land more valuable and environmentally responsible. And every deal we did, everything we worked at, it was how could we do it better? How could we learn more? How could we ask more questions? How could we, be more vigilant in our success? And I'll be very honest with you that you make every mistake in the world. Sometimes you go way too far. But it's that effort, it's that constant drive, not just to be successful in terms of making money, but be successful in terms of doing a better job with your job,
Hmm.
being more vigilant in your own life, in your work ethic, and that's the most important thing that I can tell anybody is that, that's why Exceptional Results Now was created, is because it is about getting results at the end of the day. And I'm not focused on just getting you results. I'm focused on getting you exceptional results. You want to go 10 feet? I'm going to take you 100. I'm going to make you jump farther than you ever, thought you could. And you don't have to like me. In fact, I want you to hate me.
Hmm.
I want you to be like, you know what? This guy, Jason, is the worst person in the world because he keeps pushing me further than I ever want to go. But when you get the results that you didn't even imagine, and I'll end on this because it's really important that it really goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the fact that when we get to self-actualization, that's actually only the beginning.
Hmm.
And everybody looks at self-actualization as the end. And it's like, no, 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 no.
Hmm.
The fact that you've gotten to this point of seeing where your future is and seeing who you want to be and becoming that person, now you have to drive yourself even harder to see how great of an impact you can make for the world around you. Because once you've gotten there, it's great. Everybody's like, okay, I made it to the top. This is great. No, no, no. Once you get to the top, you got to, show
The
that
top.
at the top and
Hmm.
that you're going to, live there and work there and continue to improve. And that is, the thing about self-actualization and the hierarchy of needs is that you just constantly are trying to be better and, make a bigger and bigger impact, that you can.
First of all, I want every teacher, every instructor that is listening to us right now to recognize the value of putting quotes on their wall. Because I can tell you, I am a living testimony. The quote that was on my English teacher's wall was by Emerson, about to know that one life is breathed easier is to know that you succeeded.
Wow.
And there's much more to that quote. And yet it is a quote I live by to this day, along with Marianne Williamson's, you're going to shine brighter because, and you're going to give people other people permission to do so. And although I cannot tell you how often I remind people, you don't know what seeds you're planting, yet plant them anyways.
That's
And
right.
don't worry about who's watching. Don't worry about any other pieces. And as you know, One Light Ahead is all about guiding light bulb moments and creating those moments where people can discover perceptions.
Yeah.
And it's going to leave me with one question left for you, and then for you to share whatever else you want to share. Because as you know, sometimes I just open it up that way, and sometimes I leave it towards the end. But we had a couple things we wanted to make sure we clarified.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is next Wednesday, we're starting our podcast, and they can go to I'm figuring out how we're going to set up. We're going to set up a Facebook group, and I'll put the group link in this Freedom Friday video on our YouTube and on our Facebook and our LinkedIn and all that stuff. And we're going to have a Addressing the Elephant in the Room Facebook group for our podcast. That is going to be our podcast for leadership development. And we're going to be interviewing association leaders, membership, corporations, etc., because there are elephants in the room, as we got to discover in a class I just got to lead the other day.
That's right. And the question you just asked, the most important thing about this interaction right now is that you asked an incredibly valuable question that I think a lot of people want to know, but oftentimes are afraid to ask. The point to that is that we just launched the group Leading with Exceptionalism, and the goal behind it is really to build a tribe of people that really want to be exceptional, exactly as I just talked about my mission. And I invite everybody to introduce themselves and ask questions. And it's very hard for people to take that as a open opportunity to actually do something. And, I literally did a post where I said, ask, listen, and observe. Because when you ask a question, you had a chance to listen to me, but also observe how I talked about it. And I'm sure what you observed more than anything else was my enthusiasm and excitement for what it is that I'm doing and what it is that you and I are collaborating on. And the elephant in the room, addressing the elephant in the room, to me, and for everybody it's different, but to me, it's really about the opportunity to ask a very, very bold question to somebody and then listen and observe to how they respond. And the freedom that they begin to feel. It's amazing when you ask somebody a really tough question, how uncomfortable they are when you first ask it, but then they slowly start to talk. And as they start to talk, it opens up their world because you're listening and you're not judging them. And that's the biggest thing for, I think, the majority of people on our planet, is that they would like to be allowed to be more comfortable in sharing things that, they're struggling with.
I love so many things you said there. And as you know, as a coach, our opportunity is to learn multiple phases of listening, right?
Yeah.
And I spoke about that in our top 7 video I did this month. Is there's actually multiple phases of listening and observing, and you have a filter system in which you show up to observe. And so many people don't recognize that filter system, which causes that judgment, because they think they're not in judgment, but their filter system created a trigger that caused a judgment that causes them to react to it instead of respond. And so that observation process is so key. And that opportunity, what we discovered in that first group, and I'm going to be teaching it again at the Sacramento Better Business Bureau, and I'm sure many others, is the opportunity to recognize that when you bring up that elephant and you truly allow people to communicate about it in a way that is, how do we go into resolution, not into judgment, not into criticism, not into blame, yet into how are we contributing, how are we being responsible, how are we looking at what, as you said, even homelessness and hunger, there is a resolution if we're choosing to be one little millimeter at a time, focus on the resolution.
Yeah.
And that's what we get to an opportunity. And even as we chose in the light bulb moments, creating that, you have to be willing to look in the mirror, because you're the one that creates that light bulb moment. You're the one that opens up that perception, which leads me perfectly into the next question. And that is, what's the biggest perception you've had to overcome in your journey?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm going to see, this is a great question, because now I have to figure out, are you talking about in terms of perception of people looking at me, or perception of what I thought entrepreneurship was versus what it really is? Perception of running a company, what it really requires versus what we think it requires. There are so many different ways I could answer this
You
question.
could answer that multitude of answers, right?
That's right.
What's the first one that comes to mind on any subject? What's the one that's just aching for you to speak about?
The honest truth is the reality of running a business versus what people think it is, and being a business owner. And um, entrepreneurship is often misunderstood, because we come into it with this idea that we're going to be the next, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, or Warren Buffett. And then we find out that 90% of most entrepreneurs fail time and time again, and that you really become successful like Colonel Sanders, and it's very funny, because again, he was successful, and the same thing with the Wendy's owner, Dave, I forget his last name, forgive
I'm
me,
with
but
you.
uh, the point is that a lot of men and women who go into business, um, we we become serial entrepreneurs because we realize that we're much more valuable and effective in this leadership role than we are working for somebody else, number one. But number two is that we are not successful in our own minds when we work for somebody else. In other words, we have this feeling of not just restriction, but an inability to help others. Because again, when you are a leader, when you're an entrepreneur, you're getting out in front. You're not a boss. You're not telling everybody what to do and walking away and saying, well, why isn't it done yet? You're trying to figure out, how do you get people to make something happen effectively, so that, the business can grow, so that customers can get their, services. And that's the most important thing, is that you're really creating a relationship with your customers. So um, that being, oh wow, suddenly I apologize. Suddenly the volume on the phone. So I'm checking out the messages, and I heard myself. It was really funny.
It
Um,
all works.
the the value that you're really creating as an entrepreneur, we're not really trained to be CEOs. We're not trained to be executives.
Mhm.
And I actually went to school for executive leadership, after I was an entrepreneur for many years, because it's like, well, wait a second, there's a completely different responsibility here. How do I all of a sudden, create these teams and get people to really understand a vision and grow a company, and find the right people, and understand how to buy businesses and sell businesses and all these different things, and then get to the board level and involve people at that, it becomes an enormous responsibility. And that's where, as entrepreneurs, it's kind of like, leave it to the next guy. So I successfully transitioned from being an entrepreneur to an executive, and now I've transitioned back from, executive leadership to working more with, small and medium-sized enterprises, where we are much more entrepreneurs. We have the title, a lot of us put the title of CEO,
Mhm.
but we're very far from what a real CEO is. I mean, you take a Fortune 500 company CEO, and he could not play in our sandbox just as much as we could not play in his sandbox or her sandbox. But um, it's really a matter of recognizing that the leadership that an entrepreneur comes to the table with is a fearlessness, a courageousness, and a never say die, never say quit attitude that, again, that is what makes them relentless and unstoppable if they're really committed to it. So you have a lot of, people who dabble, and then you have some people who struggle, and then you have people that are committed. And the breakthrough to being exceptional is where you understand that you have to be relentless at this, and that failure is an opportunity, not an end of the road. It's literally like a baby. You do something, you fall down, you get right back up. You say, okay, I pushed myself to this limit. What's the next one?
Couldn't have asked for a more concise and appropriate answer for all the things we're working on. And every time we communicate about something, it always makes me realize how much our paths have been aligned, and how much we complement and yet have so much to grow from each other on. And ironically, I also was an entrepreneur for many years before I decided to get my master's in leadership, because of the same thing. I discovered that in order for coaching to really make the impact for to build up teams, etc., I had to figure out another piece of leadership, because until someone's truly ready to lead themselves, as you said, that relentless leadership, and truly willing to look in the mirror and say, how am I contributing, how am I making empowering others to contribute, and truly creating a culture, and where there is unity, there is synergy, there is a commitment to a peace and a purpose and a presence that is all aligned. And that is just obviously things we are going to be working diligently on. So I wholeheartedly agree. Anything you wanted to make sure you just share before I remind people about our upcoming podcast?
Sure. Just a couple of quick things. Again, Jason Safford, the book is Winning with Exceptionalism. You can actually go to that website, winningwithexceptionalism.com. Exceptional Results Now is also .com. You can go to Exceptional Results Now if you're interested. And Jason Safford LLC is where my professional coaching is housed. So those are the ways in which people can get access to me, as well as the Facebook group, Leading with Exceptionalism. And yes, April and I are collaborating on addressing the elephant in the room. We're also collaborating on working together with One Light Ahead and Exceptional Results Now to provide even more robust services to our respective communities in the world at large. And most importantly is really for people to appreciate that within every one of us is not only a great story, but an incredible amount of energy that, directed the right way, can deliver exceptional results.
Again, perfectly concise. And we start on Wednesday. We will have a set schedule and time. We'll put the information on the post in each of the videos. And we are absolutely willing to interview any association community leaders that are willing to address the elephant in the room. And thank you again for joining us, Jason. And I am more than ecstatic about all the opportunities we are going to co-collaborate together.
This was awesome, April. I'm delighted to have been a guest and very excited for both of us in terms of the direction we're going and what we're about to do.
We're just unleashing the beginning. Have an amazing weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to comment, share comments, thoughts. That book is still on the promotional item. So it's just an investment of shipping, if I remember right, at this current moment. So in the same aspect, there's tons of other opportunities on both of our sites, and we'll make sure to and share all the upcoming things as they get launched as well. Have an amazing weekend, everyone. Thanks again, Jason.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.